The scent of power and expensive whiskey always announced Marcus Chen before he entered a room. The bitter February wind sliced through Manhattan's financial district like a razor, carrying with it the sharp smell of the Hudson River and deals made in shadows where the law couldn't see. Inside Crimson Palace, warmth radiated from every surface. Crystal chandeliers dripped golden light across polished black marble floors that reflected everything like dark mirrors. The gentle hum of conversation blended with smooth jazz that floated from speakers concealed within the mahogany walls. Jasmine Brooks moved through the elegant crowd with the kind of invisibility that came from years of practice. Her black uniform was immaculate, her dark hair twisted into an elegant bun at the nape of her neck. At 26, she had perfected the art of existing without demanding attention. It was a survival skill, essential for anyone working in a place where New York's most dangerous men came to conduct business that would never appear on any official record. She refilled crystal glasses with champagne, cleared away plates that still held expensive food, kept her gaze lowered, though she observed everything. The nervous congressman in the corner booth who kept checking his phone, the real estate mogul who only dealt in unmarked bills, the defense attorney whose clients never seemed to face justice. She moved like water, filling spaces and disappearing before anyone could register her presence. The evening carried a strange weight that Jasmine couldn't name. Something electric hung in the air, like the pressure that builds before a summer storm breaks over the city. She felt it in the tension between her shoulder blades, in the way her instincts whispered warnings she couldn't quite interpret. Across the dining room, Marcus Chen dominated the space near the exclusive corner table. At 34, he didn't need to raise his voice or make threats. People simply understood what he was and gave him the respect that came from fear, dressed in expensive suits. Tall and lean, every movement he made was calculated and precise. The black ink of a tiger tattoo curved up from his collar, disappearing beneath his tailored shirt, seeming to shift and prowl with each breath he took. On paper, Marcus Chen owned legitimate businesses, construction companies, import ventures, luxury real estate developments. But Jasmine knew, like everyone who worked at Crimson Palace knew, that Marcus Chen's real empire existed in the places where light didn't reach. Korean crime syndicates, protection operations, territory claimed and held with violence and absolute silence. She had worked at Crimson Palace for nearly 3 years, just another anonymous face among the staff. She needed this job desperately, needed the stability it provided, needed to remain unseen in a city where asking the wrong questions could get you erased. But tonight invisibility was about to shatter like glass under pressure. Vincent Park, the floor manager, materialized beside her with unusual urgency, etched across his features. His worry lines seemed deeper than they had been an hour ago. He spoke her name quietly, almost like an apology. Table 12 needs immediate service. Now. Table 12, the corner table, Marcus Chen's table. Vincent's voice dropped even lower. He requested you specifically. Jasmine's heartbeat accelerated. He doesn't know my name. He knows it now. Go immediately. Don't make direct eye contact. Don't speak unless he addresses you first. And please, for both our sakes, don't do anything that could cause problems. She approached the table carrying water and leather-bound menus, her face arranged into an expression of pleasant neutrality that revealed nothing. Marcus Chen sat with 3 men, all Korean, all watching her with the kind of focused attention that made her skin prickle with warning. He didn't acknowledge her arrival, simply continued his conversation with his second-in-command in rapid Korean, his voice carrying that particular coldness that meant he was making a point. Look at this woman, like some trained animal waiting for commands. Black people always know their place, don't they? Always so obedient. His companions laughed with the cruel certainty of men who believed themselves untouchable. Something ancient and powerful ignited in Jasmine's chest, burning through the careful control she'd maintained for years. She had spent nearly 2 decades running from her father's world, from the Korean language he'd taught her at their small kitchen table in Queens, from the blood that had stained her childhood memories, from everything she'd tried desperately to forget and leave behind. She set down the menu carefully, precisely, then lifted her eyes to meet Marcus Chen's gaze directly. It was a violation of every unspoken rule that governed this world, a challenge that shouldn't exist. In flawless Korean with a Busan accent that belonged to working-class neighborhoods and street markets, she spoke 3 words that cut through the room like a blade. "The dog isn't me. It's you." The restaurant went absolutely silent. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Glasses froze halfway to mouths. Marcus Chen's hand jerked, sending his water glass crashing to the floor. The sound of breaking crystal seemed impossibly loud in the sudden quiet. Water spread across the white tablecloth, like blood seeping through gauze. Jasmine didn't flinch, didn't look away, didn't retreat. "You think you can insult me because of my skin? Because I serve wealthy men their food. I understood every single word you said, and I'm telling you right now, standing here in front of your men, the only dog in this restaurant is the one who tears down others to feel powerful." The silence that followed was suffocating, absolute, dangerous. Marcus Chen rose slowly from his seat, unfolding to his full height, towering over her. For one suspended moment, she genuinely believed he might kill her right there in front of everyone. His hand moved toward his jacket, and she caught the outline of a weapon beneath the expensive fabric. Instead, something shifted in his expression. Surprise, fascination, something that looked almost like respect. His mouth curved into a smile that held no warmth whatsoever, only cold calculation and dangerous interest. "What is your name?" "Jasmine Brooks." "Well, Jasmine Brooks." He leaned closer, near enough that she could smell expensive cologne mixed with whiskey, and something darker beneath it all. Smoke and violence and power. "You just made the most interesting mistake of your entire life." He pulled 5 $100 bills from his wallet, dropped them carelessly on the table, and walked toward the exit. His men scrambled to follow, their faces showing shock and confusion. Vincent appeared at her elbow immediately, his face drained of all color. "Pack your belongings, you're finished here. Do you have any idea what you just did? Do you understand who that was?" But Jasmine was watching Marcus Chen's retreating figure, watching the way he paused at the restaurant entrance. Turned back once, his eyes finding hers across the crowded dining room. Something in her gut told her with absolute certainty that this was far from finished. She had just confronted a mafia boss in his native language, called him a dog in front of his soldiers, shattered every rule of survival that governed this city. Why had she done it? Because some insults sink into your bones and poison you from the inside. Some insults you swallow and carry forever. And some insults you answer, even when answering might cost you absolutely everything. Especially then. The choice between silence and dignity isn't really a choice at all. It's a revelation of who you are when the world demands you bow. Jasmine Brooks had just revealed exactly who she was, and Marcus Chen had seen it, recognized it, marked her with his attention. Whatever came next would change everything. Marcus Chen couldn't quiet his mind. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse apartment, Manhattan's skyline stretching before him like a kingdom of light and shadow on black canvas. It was nearly 4 in the morning, and the city still pulsed with life, still breathed, still moved through its endless cycle. But all he could see was her face, the waitress who had looked him directly in the eye without fear, the woman who had called him a dog in flawless Busan Korean, the accent of his childhood streets and his grandmother's kitchen. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass, trying to anchor himself in something tangible, something real. His reflection stared back at him, tiger tattoo dark against his skin, eyes shadowed with something he refused to name. Obsession was a weakness he couldn't afford. It had been 6 days since Crimson Palace, 6 days since she had shattered every rule of his world with 3 perfectly chosen words. He had replayed that moment endlessly, examining it from every angle like a jeweler studying a diamond for flaws. The way her spine had straightened with pride and fury, the fire that had burned in her dark eyes, the accent that belonged to Busan's working-class neighborhoods, to his grandmother's generation, to a world and ocean and lifetime away from this Manhattan penthouse. How did a black woman in New York City speak Korean like she had been raised in the streets where he had learned to fight and survive? Behind him, his technology specialist cleared his throat nervously. David Kim looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes from days of continuous searching and investigation. "Boss, I have the complete report." Marcus Chen didn't turn from the window, didn't shift his gaze from the city below. "Tell me everything. Jasmine Brooks, 26 years old, born in Queens, New York. Mother deceased. Died of cancer nearly 2 decades ago when Jasmine was only 9 years old. Father listed as unknown on the birth certificate and all official documentation. David paused, the silence heavy with significance. Her employment history is completely clean. 3 restaurant positions before Crimson Palace. No criminal record whatsoever, no outstanding debt, no gang connections or affiliations. She's essentially invisible in all the ways that matter. Nobody is truly invisible. Marcus's voice carried ice. Continue. That's exactly the problem we're facing. Before age 9, there's virtually nothing. No school records, no medical files, no photographs, no digital footprint. It's like she materialized out of thin air the moment her mother died, and she entered the system. Marcus Chen turned slowly, his full attention now focused on David. The system? Her mother was dying, couldn't provide adequate care anymore. Jasmine spent 4 years in New York's foster care system before aging out at 18. She worked her way through community college, kept her head down consistently, never caused any trouble or drew attention. David hesitated, choosing his next words carefully. It's too clean, boss, too perfect. People who hide this thoroughly are either running from something dangerous or protecting something valuable. Usually both. Marcus moved to his desk, where David had arranged printed documents, photographs, investigation reports, timeline reconstructions, everything they could uncover about a woman who had deliberately made herself disappear into the background of the city. He picked up her employee identification photo from Crimson Palace. She was beautiful in a way that didn't demand or ask for attention. Smooth, dark skin, intelligent eyes that seemed to see more than they revealed, mouth set in a line that suggested she'd learned early in life to swallow dangerous words, hair pulled back severely, revealing the elegant curve of her neck and the strong line of her jaw. But it was her eyes that captured and held him. Even in this staged photograph taken for a restaurant security badge, defiance lived there. Fire banked carefully, but never extinguished, waiting for the right moment to burn. The Korean language, Marcus said quietly, almost to himself. Where did she learn it? Who taught her? That's what I cannot figure out at all. There's no record of any language classes, no travel history to Korea, no Korean foster families in any of her placements during those 4 years. David pulled up an audio file on his tablet. But I had someone at the restaurant that night who captured everything. He pressed play, and Jasmine's voice filled the quiet penthouse, speaking Korean with the precise intonation and rhythm of Busan's working-class neighborhoods. The accent his father had systematically beaten out of him when they had immigrated to America seeking better opportunities. The accent he still heard in his dreams, still felt in his bones, still carried in the deepest parts of himself that money and power couldn't change. Marcus closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. It wasn't merely fluent Korean. It was native-level speech. It was authentic and real and impossible. Someone taught her personally, he said, opening his eyes. Someone who actually lived in Busan, who spoke it at home every single day, not in any classroom. Someone who wanted her to remember where it came from, wanted her to carry it. But who? Her mother was American, with no connections to Korea. Father completely unknown and erased from every record we can access. There's absolutely no logical connection to Korea anywhere in her entire background. Marcus Chen opened his eyes, his analytical mind working through possibilities and scenarios. A black woman with perfect Busan Korean, a father systematically erased from all documentation, a childhood that effectively doesn't exist in any official record before age 9. She's protecting someone's memory, he said softly with certainty, or she's hiding from someone's past. Maybe both. David shifted his weight uncomfortably. Boss, should I continue the investigation? She's just a waitress who got fired. You could walk away from this, forget about her, move forward. Could I truly forget? Marcus's laugh held no humor whatsoever. He picked up the photograph again, studying every detail of the face that had invaded his thoughts. Tell me something, David. In all your years working for me, have you ever witnessed anyone look me directly in the eye and challenge me publicly? No, boss, never. Have you ever heard anyone outside our organization speak Busan Korean anywhere in this entire city? No, boss. I haven't. Then explain to me exactly how I'm supposed to forget the only woman who has done both. He set the photo down with deliberate care. Find out absolutely everything about her. I want to know what she eats for breakfast, where she goes when she thinks nobody is watching her, who she calls late at night when she can't sleep, everything that exists to know. And if she's dangerous in some way? Marcus smiled, but the expression held no warmth. Then I want her close where I can watch her carefully and control the situation. And if she's somehow innocent? He paused, genuinely considering the question. Then I want to understand why she has absolutely no fear of me. David nodded and moved toward the door, but Marcus's voice stopped him before he could leave. And David, "Yes, boss? Bring her to me directly." "Sir? You heard me clearly. Find her. Bring her here to this building. Don't hurt her in any way. Don't frighten her more than absolutely necessary. But I want to look into the eyes of the woman who speaks like my grandmother did, and ask her directly who taught her to be fearless in a world that should have destroyed that quality long ago." After David left, closing the door quietly behind him, Marcus returned to the windows. Dawn was beginning to break over the East River, painting the sky in shades of rose gold and deep crimson. He thought about his grandmother in Busan, the fierce woman who had raised him until his father had dragged them to America for a better life. She had spoken exactly the way Jasmine did, rough and honest, and completely unafraid of anything or anyone. She would have liked the waitress who called him a dog, he thought, with something almost like affection. Would have laughed that deep belly laugh of hers, and told him he absolutely deserved it for being arrogant. But his grandmother was dead now, his older brother was dead, his father was dead, and Marcus Chen was the last survivor of a bloodline built entirely on violence and enforced silence. Until a woman with his grandmother's exact accent had looked him in the eye and refused to bow, refused to submit, refused to accept his power as absolute. "Who are you really, Jasmine Brooks?" he whispered to the rising sun that painted the city in gold and red. "And why do you feel like the answer to a question I didn't even know I needed to ask?" The city offered no reply, no answers, no comfort, only the promise that soon, very soon, he would have her in this room, would hear her voice speaking his language again, would uncover every secret she had buried beneath that perfect mask of invisibility she wore. And then he would decide whether she represented salvation or destruction for everything he had built. Perhaps, he thought as the sun climbed higher, she was both. Perhaps that was exactly why he couldn't stop thinking about her, couldn't let this go, couldn't walk away. She was the question and the answer, the threat and the promise, the past and the future, all wrapped up in one impossible woman who spoke his grandmother's language and refused to fear him. The waiting was the hardest part. But Marcus Chen had built an empire on patience and calculated moves. He could wait a little longer to solve the mystery of Jasmine Brooks, though every moment that passed felt like an eternity, stretching between who he was and who he might become if he let himself care about someone other than himself. That was the real danger she represented, not physical threat or betrayal or exposure, but the possibility that she might make him remember what it felt like to be human instead of a weapon wrapped in expensive clothes. The photograph arrived on a Thursday morning. Daniel discovered it during a routine security sweep of Marcus's office, tucked inside a plain envelope that had been slipped under the door sometime during the night. No security cameras caught who delivered it. No witnesses saw anything suspicious, just the envelope and the photograph inside, waiting like a bomb. Daniel stared at it for a long moment before walking to where Marcus stood at his usual place by the windows, coffee in hand. "Boss, you need to see this immediately." Marcus took the envelope without looking away from the city spread below. He had been distracted lately, everyone had noticed, spending more time with the waitress, asking fewer questions about business operations, smiling at things that shouldn't make a man like him smile. He pulled out the photograph and everything stopped. The world narrowed to this single point. The image was old, grainy, taken maybe 18 years ago. It showed a man in his late 30s, black, tall, with kind eyes and a careful smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He stood outside a storage facility in Newark, New Jersey. Beside him was a girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, skinny and serious-looking. her posture already carrying the careful stillness her father had taught her for survival. But it wasn't the subjects that made Marcus's blood turn to ice in his veins. It was the man's face. Kim Min-ho, the traitor. The enforcer who had stolen $18 million from the Chen organization 20 years ago. The man whose betrayal had started a brutal war that killed Marcus's older brother and 3 other members of his family. The Black Korean, whose name was synonymous with destruction in their world, whose face had haunted Marcus's nightmares for years. The man Marcus had tracked to Queens 18 years ago and killed with his own hands in a dim hospice room. "Where did you get this?" His voice was barely above a whisper. Dangerous. It was delivered anonymously. No note, just the photograph. Daniel hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Boss, the girl in the photo. I know exactly who she is." Marcus stared at the young face, already seeing the woman it would become. The same eyes, the same defiant tilt to her chin, the same mouth that would one day call him a dog in perfect Busan Korean, the same face that had been invading his thoughts and dreams. Jasmine. The floor shifted beneath him. The world narrowed to this single devastating point of truth. The woman he had been drawn to, who had challenged him, who had made him feel something other than cold calculation for the first time in years. The woman whose voice reminded him of home, whose defiance made him want to be better than what he was. The woman he was falling for despite every rule he had ever lived by. She was the daughter of his greatest enemy. "Where is she right now?" he asked, his voice completely empty of emotion. "In her room, still sleeping probably." Marcus walked through the penthouse like a man moving underwater. Everything felt distant, unreal, wrong. His hands shook, his chest ached, his mind raced through implications and betrayals. 18 years he had hunted Kim Min-ho across the country. 18 years he had carried the rage of his brother's death like a stone in his chest. And when he had finally found the bastard dying of cancer in a rundown hospice room in Queens, Marcus had put a bullet in his head anyway. Mercy killing or execution, he had never been entirely sure, but he had made absolutely certain the man died knowing who killed him, knowing his sins had caught up. And now his daughter was sleeping 30 feet away behind a locked door. He opened her door without knocking, without warning. Jasmine sat up in bed immediately, her hair loose around her shoulders, eyes wide with alarm at his sudden intrusion. "What's wrong?" He threw the photograph onto the bed. It landed face up between them. She looked down, went completely still. When she looked up again, he saw the truth written across her face. The recognition, the fear, the knowledge that her secret had just destroyed everything between them. "Kim Min-ho," Marcus said, voice cold as death itself. "Also known as Michael Kim, Michael Brooks. 3 names for the same man. The Black Korean enforcer who grew up in Busan, who worked for my father's organization, who betrayed my entire family, who stole $18 million, who killed my brother." He stepped closer, looming over her. "Your father." Jasmine's lips parted, but no sound came out at first. "I didn't know who you were," she finally whispered. "When I started at the restaurant, when I called you a dog, when you brought me here, I swear on everything I didn't know." "Liar." The word cracked like a whip. "You've been playing me from the beginning, challenging me publicly, speaking Korean to make me obsessed with you. You've been manipulating me the entire time. No." She stood, the photograph falling to the floor between them. "I worked at that restaurant because I needed money to survive. I spoke Korean because you insulted me, you investigated me, you brought me here. I didn't seek you out at all, but you knew who I was. You knew my family name, you knew what we were. I knew Korean Mafia existed in New York. I didn't know you were the Chen family specifically. I didn't know." Her voice broke. "I didn't know you were the one who killed him." Silence crashed between them like thunder. "What did you say?" Marcus's voice was barely audible. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. 18 years ago. Queens. My father was dying. Cancer, just like I told you. But one night someone came to the hospice. Someone who knew his real name, who knew what he had done decades ago. I was there visiting late. I heard the shot. By the time I got to his room, there was blood everywhere and a man walking away down the hallway. She looked at him, and the pain in her eyes was devastating. I saw your face for maybe 5 seconds in the hallway. You didn't see me, I was just another visitor, another nobody in the background. But I never forgot that face. Marcus felt the ground open beneath him. He had been so focused on Kim Min-ho, so consumed with finally ending the hunt, that he had never thought to check if anyone else was there. Never considered that the traitor might have family watching him die twice. You recognized me, he said slowly, understanding dawning. At the restaurant, you knew exactly who I was. Yes. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, angry at the tears. I knew, but I didn't plan anything. I was just trying to survive, trying to build a life away from everything my father had been. And then you walked into my workplace and insulted me in the language he taught me. And I just snapped. I answered before thinking. And then everything spiraled out of control. Hey, beautiful souls. Can we pause here for just a moment? If you've been following this story, if you're feeling what Jasmine and Marcus are going through, I need your help. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers to keep bringing you these intense, emotional stories that make you feel something real. Hit that subscribe button right now. And here's something I want you to think about. Have you ever had a moment where your past caught up with you, where a secret you kept changed everything? Drop a comment and tell me about it. Share your story with our community. We're all in this together, learning and growing through these experiences. Now let's get back to Jasmine and Marcus, because things are about to get even more complicated. You should have told me earlier. Jasmine's laugh was bitter and broken. When exactly? When you kidnapped me? When you locked me in this penthouse? When you started looking at me like I was something other than an enemy? Tell me, Marcus Chen, when exactly was the right moment to say, by the way, you murdered my father? He had no answer. Because she was right, there had been no right moment. Just layers of lies and truth tangled too tightly to separate. Your father killed my brother, he said quietly. Started a war that destroyed families, stole everything from us. My father protected innocence. Jasmine's voice shook with controlled fury. He found out about the trafficking operation, about what your family was doing to those girls from Korea. He tried to stop it. And your brother came to kill him. Came to murder a man and his daughter to keep the secret. My father fought back. He killed in self-defense. That's a complete lie. Is it? There's a letter in a storage unit in Newark. My father left everything. Bank records, recordings, proof of everything. She pulled a key from the chain around her neck, threw it at him. It hit his chest and clattered to the floor. Go see for yourself. Every single dollar he took is still there. He never spent any of it. He kept it as insurance, as evidence of what your family really was. Marcus stared at the key on the floor between them, like it was a snake. My father was a businessman, my brother was a trafficker, a monster. And when my father tried to expose it, when he tried to save those girls, you hunted him for 18 years like he was the villain in the story. Jasmine's voice cracked. He raised me alone, taught me Korean so I would understand where he came from, taught me to be strong because he knew someday his past might catch up with us. And then you put a bullet in his head while he was dying, while he was already dying. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. His entire world, everything he had believed about his family, about his brother's death, about the hunt that had defined half his life, it was all built on lies. Or maybe she's lying now, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe this is revenge. Maybe you planned all of this, then go to Newark. Jasmine's voice was steel. Storage unit 447. The key is right there on your floor. Go see the truth yourself. And when you realize I'm not lying, when you see what your family really was, then you can decide what to do with me. But don't stand there and tell me my father was the monster when your family was trafficking teenage girls. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 18 years of pain and misunderstanding and truth that had been buried. I need time to think, Marcus said finally. I need to see this evidence. Until then, you stay in this room. You don't leave. You don't make calls. You don't do anything. Fine. She sat back on the bed, exhausted. I've been a prisoner here for weeks anyway. What's a few more days? Marcus picked up the key from the floor, closed his fist around it. If you're lying to me about any of this, I'm not lying, and deep down you already know that. That's why you're so angry. Not because I deceived you, but because everything you believed was a lie. He left without another word, slamming the door behind him. The lock clicked into place. Jasmine sat alone in her room, staring at the photograph on the floor, her father's face looking up at her. I'm sorry, Papa, she whispered in Korean. "I tried to keep your secrets, but the truth always finds a way out eventually, doesn't it?" Marcus made the drive to Newark that afternoon, Daniel and 2 other men following in a second car. The storage facility was exactly as the photograph had shown, old and industrial. Unit 447 was in the back corner, covered in dust. The key turned smoothly. Inside was a single metal filing cabinet and 3 sealed boxes. Marcus spent 4 hours going through everything, bank statements showing $18 million transferred but never spent, sitting in an account under a false name, recordings of his brother discussing prices for girls, ages, destinations, photographs of the trafficking operation, shipping manifests, names of buyers, and a letter written in Korean addressed to whoever found it. "My name is Kim Min Ho. If you are reading this, I am dead. I worked for the Chen family as an enforcer for 12 years. I was loyal, I was good at my job. I didn't ask questions. Until I found out what Chen Tae-young was doing, the trafficking, the girls. Some as young as 14. I couldn't look away, I couldn't pretend I didn't know. I tried to go to the authorities, but they were paid off. So I took the money, all of it, and I took the evidence, and I saved 17 girls, got them to safety, to real protection. Chen Tae-young came for me, came to my apartment to kill me and my daughter. I fought back. I killed him. It was him or us. I don't regret it. I took my daughter and ran, changed our names, built a new life. But I knew they would never stop hunting me. So I'm leaving this. The truth. The proof. So that when they find me, when they kill me, maybe someone will know the real story." Marcus sat on the concrete floor of the storage unit, surrounded by evidence, and felt everything he had believed shatter. His brother hadn't been murdered by a traitor. He had been killed by a man protecting his daughter and 17 other girls from a monster. And Marcus had spent 18 years hunting down a hero. Had killed him. Had robbed Jasmine of her father for a lie. He returned to the penthouse as the sun was setting, carrying the letter. He unlocked Jasmine's door. She was sitting by the window, staring out at the city. She didn't turn when he entered. "You were telling the truth," he said quietly, "about everything." She didn't respond. "My brother was trafficking girls. Your father tried to stop him, saved 17 lives, and I killed him for it." Still no response. "Jasmine, She turned finally, and the look in her eyes stopped his words. Don't apologize. Don't try to make this better. You killed my father. You hunted him for 18 years and put a bullet in his head while he was dying. And now you know he was innocent, that he was the hero. But it doesn't change anything, does it? He's still dead. He was still alone and terrified at the end, and I still watched you walk away." Marcus had no words. Nothing he could say would fix this, would heal this. "I'm sorry isn't enough," he said. "No," she agreed, "it's not." The next 72 hours passed in painful silence. Marcus unlocked Jasmine's door, gave her complete freedom of the penthouse, but they barely spoke. They moved around each other like ghosts, carrying the weight of 18 years of tragedy between them. Marcus spent hours in his office, making calls, arranging things. Jasmine watched the city and tried to figure out what came next. On the 4th day, everything changed again. Daniel burst into the penthouse at dawn, his face pale with urgency. "Boss, we have a serious problem. The Zhao family just hit 3 of our warehouses. They burned everything, and they left a message." Marcus stood from his desk. "What message?" "They know about her. They know about the girl. They're saying you've gone soft, that you're compromised, that you're weak now, and they're coming for both of you." Jasmine appeared in the doorway, having heard everything. "How do they know about me?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Someone in my organization has been feeding them information. Someone close. The photograph, the timing, all of it was calculated to create exactly this situation." Daniel nodded grimly. "They're forcing your hand. Either you prove you're still ruthless by eliminating her, or they'll see you as weak and move against you with everything they have. The classic trap." Marcus looked at Jasmine, and she saw the calculation in his eyes. The cold assessment of a man who had built an empire on making hard choices. "This would be so much easier if I hated you," he said quietly. but it would also be easier if I loved you, and I'm not sure I'm capable of that anymore." "So, where does that leave us?" Jasmine asked. She was surprisingly calm, having lived her entire life knowing something like this might come eventually. "It leaves us with a choice." Marcus moved to the windows, looked out at the city waking up below. "I can send you away. Give you money, new identity, fresh start somewhere far from here. You disappear and stay safe. Or you stay. And we burn down everyone who thinks they can use you against me. We expose everything my family did. We destroy the Zhao family. We rebuild something different from the ashes." Jasmine stared at him. "You would destroy your own organization? For me? Not for you." Marcus turned to face her. "For your father. For the 17 girls he saved. For every victim of what my family built. You were right. I am haunted. And maybe it's time to stop running from those ghosts and finally face them. This is insane. You'll lose everything. I've already lost everything that mattered. Power built on lies isn't worth protecting." He crossed the room, stopped in front of her. "I can't give you your father back. I can't undo what I did. But I can make sure his sacrifice meant something. We can finish what he started. Why would you do this? Because you make me want to be better than what I am. And because 18 years ago I killed a good man and didn't know it. I have to live with that forever. But maybe I can make sure no one else dies for protecting the innocent." Jasmine studied his face, searching for deception or manipulation. All she saw was exhaustion and determination, and something that looked almost like hope. "If we do this, if we really do this, we'll both end up dead, probably." "Probably," Marcus agreed. "But we'll die knowing we tried to break the cycle. That has to count for something." She thought about her father, about the letter he had left behind, about the life he had given up to save 17 girls he didn't even know, about the legacy of courage and sacrifice he had passed to her. "Tell me your plan." The smile that crossed Marcus's face was dangerous and beautiful. "We use your father's evidence. We take it to the FBI, to journalists, to international organizations. We expose everything. The trafficking, the corruption, the connections. We burn it all down publicly so completely that the Zhao family goes down with us. And then we see if we survive. If we do, we start over. Something legitimate, something clean. If we don't, at least we tried." Jasmine extended her hand. "My father would have liked this plan. Completely insane, and probably suicidal." Marcus took her hand, held it. "I wish I could have known him. Known the man instead of the ghost I created." "Me too." That night, they worked together. Marcus's resources combined with her father's evidence created an unstoppable weapon. They compiled everything into multiple packages. Bank records, recordings, photographs, testimony, locations, names, everything needed to dismantle a criminal empire. Daniel coordinated the distribution, simultaneous delivery to the FBI's Organized Crime Division, to 3 major newspapers, to international human trafficking organizations, to Interpol. By morning, it would be everywhere. Impossible to contain or suppress. The Zhao family would burn. The Chen organization would burn. Everything would burn. As dawn approached, Jasmine and Marcus stood together at the windows, watching the city prepare for a day that would change everything. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Terrified," he admitted. "You?" "Same, but also relieved. Like I've been waiting my whole life to finish what my father started." Marcus reached for her hand, laced his fingers through hers. "Whatever happens today, I want you to know something. I see him in you. Your father. The courage, the conviction, the refusal to accept evil just because it's powerful. He raised someone extraordinary." She squeezed his hand. "He would have said the same about your grandmother, that she raised someone who could still choose to be better, even after everything." They stood in silence as the sun rose over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. 2 people from opposite sides of a tragedy, choosing to stand together against the darkness. The next hours moved like a storm. News broke simultaneously across every major platform. Federal raids began immediately. Arrests started before noon. The Zhao family's operations crumbled as their protection evaporated. Marcus's legitimate businesses were seized for investigation. His accounts were frozen. Everything he had built was dismantled with surgical precision. They came for Marcus and Jasmine at 2 in the afternoon. Federal agents, warrants, the full display of legal power. Marcus surrendered peacefully. Jasmine did the same. They were separated immediately, taken to different facilities for questioning. Jasmine spent 18 hours being interviewed, telling her father's story, providing context for the evidence. When they finally allowed her to rest, she learned that Marcus had done the same, confessed to everything, provided additional evidence, cooperated completely. 2 weeks later, she was released. No charges. Witness protection offered but declined. She walked out into Manhattan's sunshine feeling like she was emerging from a grave. Daniel was waiting with a car. "Where's Marcus?" she asked immediately. "Rikers, still being held. His lawyer thinks he'll get 15 years minimum given everything he's confessed to. But the trafficking charges, the corruption charges, those aren't sticking to him. Just the other stuff. Can I see him?" Daniel nodded. "I can arrange it. Tomorrow." The visitation room at Rikers was exactly as grim as she'd expected. Marcus appeared behind the glass partition, wearing orange instead of expensive suits. He looked thinner, tired, but somehow more at peace than she'd ever seen him. "You came," he said, picking up the phone. "Of course I came. How are you holding up in here?" "I'm alive. That's more than I deserve." Jasmine pressed her hand against the glass. "The Zhao family is finished, completely dismantled. 17 of their people are facing federal trafficking charges, and 12 other organizations went down in the aftermath. Your father's evidence took down an entire network. He would be proud. I wish he could have seen it, me too." Marcus placed his hand on the glass opposite hers. "They're offering me a deal. 12 years instead of 15 if I continue cooperating. I'm taking it. 12 years is a long time. I'll wait. Jasmine, you don't have to. I want to. You chose to be better. You chose to finish what my father started. That means something. That means everything. You should move forward, build a life, be happy. I'll try. But I'm not making any promises about forgetting you." The guard announced time was up. Marcus stood slowly. "Thank you, Jasmine." "For what?" "For making me remember I could be human, for seeing something in me worth saving." She watched him being led away, back into the prison system, and felt something settle in her chest. Not happiness exactly, but purpose. Peace. The knowledge that sometimes justice looks like sacrifice, sometimes redemption costs everything, and sometimes love means waiting 12 years for someone to finish paying for their sins and emerge ready to build something new. She left Rikers Island and took the subway to Queens, found the small hospice where her father had died 18 years ago, stood outside and finally let herself cry. "I finished it, Papa," she whispered in Korean. "I finished what you started. All those girls you saved, they testified. They brought down the whole network, and the man who killed you, he's paying for it. But he's also the reason it all came to light. It's complicated. You would understand complicated." The wind carried her words away across the city. Somewhere she imagined her father heard them. Somewhere she imagined he was proud. Jasmine Brooks walked away from the hospice toward the subway, toward whatever came next. She had 12 years to build a life, to heal, to become whoever she was meant to be, beyond the daughter of a hero and the woman who challenged a monster. 12 years until Marcus Chen walked free. 12 years to see if what they had found in those desperate moments was real, or just trauma bonding in the face of destruction. Time would tell. It always did. 12 years is a lifetime, and no time at all. Jasmine learned this truth slowly, day by day, as she rebuilt herself from the ashes of everything that had happened. She moved out of New York initially, needed distance from the memories and the media attention, spent 2 years in Portland, working at a non-profit that helped trafficking survivors. The work was hard, emotionally devastating some days, but it felt like honoring her father's legacy in the most direct way possible. She visited Marcus every 3 months, 2 hours on buses and trains to get to whatever facility he'd been transferred to. They talked through glass and phones, sharing pieces of their lives, learning each other in this strange, suspended way. He told her about the prison education programs he'd enrolled in, psychology, social work, counseling, trying to understand the systems that created men like him. She told him about the survivors she worked with, how strong they were, how resilient, how her father had saved 17 lives, and those 17 had gone on to save countless others through their testimony and advocacy. In year 4, Marcus was transferred to a minimum security facility for good behavior and cooperation. Jasmine moved back to New York, felt ready to face the city again. She enrolled in graduate school, got her master's in social work, started working with at-risk youth in the foster system, the same system that had raised her. She understood those kids, understood what it meant to be invisible, to carry secrets, to survive. The media attention gradually faded. The Chenzhou trafficking scandal became a case study, then a footnote, then a memory. New scandals emerged to capture attention. The world moved on, like it always did. But Jasmine didn't forget. Neither did Marcus. Their visits continued like clockwork. Every 3 months, 2 hours of conversation through glass. They talked about everything and nothing. Books they were reading, news from the outside, memories of the brief, intense time they'd shared before everything exploded. Sometimes they talked about the future, carefully, like it was something fragile that might break if they examined it too closely. In year 7, Marcus was moved to a work release program. He got a job doing construction, learned honest labor, learned what it meant to be part of something legitimate. His letters to Jasmine became longer, more thoughtful. He was changing, genuinely transforming into someone different from the man who had kidnapped her. She could see it in his eyes during visits. The coldness was gone, replaced by something warmer, more human, more real. In year 9, Jasmine started her own non-profit. Small at first, just her and 2 volunteers, focused on helping children of incarcerated parents. She knew that world intimately now, knew what it meant to love someone behind bars, to wait, to hope. The organization grew slowly but steadily. By year 11 they had funding, a real office, a staff of 8, and were helping 40 families navigate the complexities of maintaining relationships across prison walls. Marcus heard about it through the prison grapevine before she told him. When she finally mentioned it during a visit, the pride in his eyes made her heart ache. "You're doing what I never could," he said quietly, "building something that actually helps people instead of destroying them." "I learned from the best," she replied. "My father showed me the blueprint. You showed me it's never too late to change course." The final year crawled by with agonizing slowness. Jasmine found herself counting days, then weeks, then months. She had built a full life, had friends and work and purpose, but there was still this Marcus-shaped space in her heart that had been waiting for 12 years. She didn't know if what they had found in those desperate days was real love or trauma or something else entirely. But she knew she needed to find out. Needed to see who he was now after 12 years of prison and transformation and growth. Needed to see who she was with him when they weren't running or fighting or surviving. Just 2 people, free, choosing each other. The day of his release was bright and cold, early March, the kind of day where winter was losing its grip, but spring hadn't quite arrived. Jasmine stood outside the prison gates at 6 in the morning waiting. Her heart hammered, her hands shook. 12 years of waiting coming to this single moment. The gates opened. Marcus Chen walked out into freedom, wearing clothes that didn't quite fit right, carrying a small bag with his possessions, looking around like he couldn't quite believe it was real. He was 46 now, grey threading through his dark hair, lines around his eyes, but he moved with a quiet grace he'd never had before. Not the predatory calculation of his youth, but something gentler, more grounded. His eyes found hers across the distance, and everything else fell away. Jasmine didn't run. Neither did he. They walked toward each other with deliberate steps, closing the distance slowly, giving themselves time to really see each other outside of glass partitions and prison visiting rooms. They stopped a foot apart. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he replied. 12 years, huh? 12 years. Was it worth the wait? She studied his face, saw the man he'd become, saw the ghost of who he'd been, saw the complicated mixture of past and present and future. "Ask me again in 12 more years." Marcus smiled, genuinely smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Deal. Can I hug you?" "I've been wanting to ask that for 12 years, but there was always glass between us." She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. He held her carefully at first, like she might break, then tighter, like he was afraid she might disappear. They stood like that for a long time, while the March wind whipped around them and the world continued spinning. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted quietly, his face buried in her hair. "Do what? Be a normal person. Have a normal life. Be with someone without power dynamics and danger and everything that came before." "Me neither," Jasmine said, "but maybe we figure it out together. One day at a time. I have a halfway house I'm assigned to, a parole officer, check-ins, so many rules. I have an apartment with a guest room if you need it eventually, and a non-profit that could use someone who understands systems from the inside, and 12 years of patience stored up." He pulled back to look at her. "Why did you wait? I didn't ask you to. I had to know if what we found was real. If who you became matched to I hoped you could be. And you wrote me 73 letters in 12 years. Every single one showed me someone trying to be better, someone succeeding at being better. That's worth waiting for." They walked away from the prison together, toward the parking lot where her car waited. Marcus stopped halfway there, turned to look back at the building that had held him. "Your father would hate me," he said, "for what I did, for what I was." "My father would see what I see," Jasmine replied. "Someone who chose to break the cycle, someone who paid for his sins and came out the other side still trying to be good. That's all anyone can do. Start over and try to be better." The first months were hard. Marcus struggled with freedom, with choices, with the overwhelming complexity of normal life. Jasmine struggled with patience, with trust, with letting someone in after 12 years of careful emotional management. They fought. They talked. They went to therapy separately and together. They learned each other all over again, this time without adrenaline and danger and life or death stakes. Just two people trying to build something real from the ruins of who they'd been. Marcus got a job with Jasmine's non-profit after 6 months, started helping families navigate the prison system. His perspective was invaluable, his empathy hard-earned and genuine. The families trusted him in ways they couldn't trust someone who hadn't lived it. Jasmine watched him work and saw her father's legacy continuing. Saw the ripple effects of one man's choice to save 17 girls spreading outward through time, touching lives in ways her father could never have imagined. One evening, 2 years after Marcus's release, they sat on the fire escape of Jasmine's apartment, watching the city lights come on as sunset faded. "You never asked me," Marcus said quietly. "Asked what?" "If I love you. After everything, all this time, you never asked directly." Jasmine considered this, "Because I needed to see it in actions, not hear it in words. Words are cheap. Change is expensive." "And what do you see?" "I see someone who spent 12 years becoming a better man, someone who works 14-hour days helping families he'll never meet again, someone who talks about my father with respect and regret, someone who made me coffee this morning exactly how I like it, because you paid attention." She turned to face him. "I see love in the consistent choice to show up and do the work. That's more valuable than words." Marcus reached for her hand, laced their fingers together like he'd done once before in a penthouse that no longer existed. "I do love you, though. In case the actions weren't clear enough, I need you to know that clearly. I love you too. Took me a while to admit it because it seemed impossible, but here we are. Impossible and real." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their city breathe and move below them. Two people who had found each other in the worst possible way and somehow built something beautiful from the wreckage. 3 years after Marcus's release, on the anniversary of her father's death, Jasmine and Marcus went to Queens together. To the hospice where everything had ended and in a strange way begun. They stood outside, holding hands, and Jasmine spoke in Korean. "Papa, I want you to meet someone. This is Marcus Chen. You knew him once briefly as the man who killed you. But he's different now. We're different. We finished what you started. The network is gone. Hundreds of people are free because of your courage, and we're building something to make sure it never happens again." Marcus spoke next, also in Korean, his Busan accent still present after all these years. "Kim Minho, I can never undo what I did. I'll carry that weight until I die. But I want you to know your daughter is the strongest person I've ever met. She saved me when I didn't deserve saving. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that gift." They stood together in the fading light, honoring a man who had given everything to protect innocence, a man whose sacrifice had created ripples that were still spreading through the world. That evening, Marcus asked Jasmine to marry him. No ring, no elaborate plan, just a quiet question in her kitchen while they cooked dinner together. She said yes without hesitation. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony. No elaborate celebration, just close friends and the families they'd helped through the non-profit. The survivors her father had saved 18 years ago sent flowers and letters. 17 women, now in their 30s and 40s, with careers and families and lives they wouldn't have had without Kim Min-ho's courage. "We carry forward what they started," Jasmine said in her brief speech at the reception. "My father and Marcus's grandmother, people who believed in courage and change. We honor them by continuing to choose better, by breaking cycles, by proving that redemption is possible even from the darkest places." Marcus added his own words. "I was a monster who learned to be human again. That's the story. It's not pretty or simple, but it's true. And if someone like me can change, then maybe there's hope for anyone." Now, my beautiful souls, we've reached the end of Jasmine and Marcus's journey together. But before we close this chapter, I want to hear from you. This story is about redemption, about second chances, about the courage to face our past and choose differently. Have you ever given someone a second chance? Have you ever been given one yourself? Share your story in the comments below. Our community thrives on these real conversations, these moments of vulnerability and connection. And please, if this story touched you, if it made you feel something real, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear a story about hope and change. Your support means everything and helps us continue bringing these powerful narratives to life. Thank you for being here, for listening, for being part of this journey. Until next time, remember that we're all works in progress. We all carry scars and secrets. But we also all have the capacity to choose better, to be better, to build something beautiful from the broken pieces. Keep choosing courage, keep choosing change, keep choosing love. I'll see you in the next story. 5 years into their marriage, Jasmine stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., testifying before Congress about trafficking prevention and prisoner rehabilitation. Marcus sat in the audience, watching his wife speak truth to power, and thought about the impossible journey that had brought them here. From a restaurant confrontation to a prison cell to this moment. From hatred to understanding to love. After the testimony, they walked through the city together. Just two people who had survived impossible things and come out the other side still trying to make the world better. "That's all we can do," Jasmine said, echoing her words from years ago. "Start over and try to be better than we were." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Your father would be proud. So would your grandmother. They're proud together somewhere, watching us fumble our way toward redemption." The city lights flickered on as evening fell. Jasmine and Marcus Chen walked home together, carrying the weight of their past and the hope of their future, proving that sometimes the most powerful love stories are the ones that shouldn't be possible, the ones built on forgiveness and change and the stubborn refusal to let darkness have the final word. Some stories don't have simple endings. Some stories don't wrap up neatly with all questions answered. But this story, their story, had something better. It had truth. It had transformation. It had proof that people can change, that love can grow in the strangest soil, that redemption is always possible for those brave enough to reach for it. And in the end, that's enough. More than enough. It's everything.